I believe that the intention would be to create a context in which the government would get 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they remain there longer than supposed through hell in terms of parliamentary work. If the Liberals want things to become clear and want to help people, they should simply start the election sooner.
I am fired up today after researching the things that I did. There is so much information for you that's going to be very easy to understand in today's video. We're going to be talking Jagmeet Singh, the traitor of all traitors. Are we surprised? No, not really. However, that is certainly something to get into, as well as the Trump tariff trade war, and something that came to me that I honestly haven't seen anybody else talking about, even though it is the most common sense, obvious thing. And how is nobody else putting these pieces together? I don't understand this. But first, we're going to get into a story coming out of Quebec that I told you yesterday we were going to discuss today. And it has to do with something they're doing in regard to their immigration that some would say the rest of the country should absolutely follow suit. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe to the channel. Give me a follow on other social media platforms as well. You can also like the video and comment your thoughts down below.
We will be pretty clear. We are a nation. We have a culture. We have some democratic values. Men and women are equal. And people coming here must accept that. And after, we want them to contribute to the society. So this is completely new, and this is really different from what the Canada is saying.
So just yesterday, Quebec tabled a social contract bill for immigrants amid cuts to integration programs. Quebec's minister responsible for immigration and the French language said that it was about time the government created mechanisms to ensure immigrants or people who identify themselves as members of cultural minorities are adhering to what he described as Quebec's common culture, adding, "We don't want ghettos, we want one society." Now, the thing about this, I've pointed this out plenty of times, Canada in the past had a pretty good immigration model to the point where people weren't as opposed to it as they are today. However, if you are somebody, whether you're claiming asylum or you're moving here and you leave your country for a better life in a new country, you get to the new country and you're just filled with all of the exact same stuff that you tried to leave, because all of these people are like congregating in certain areas. They're not a part of the rest of the culture. They don't believe in the same things as the rest of the culture. You end up just moving somewhere else where you may as well have just stayed at home after all. Think about all of this stuff with people on the streets and the fireworks and doing all of this stuff that is just not Canadian to do. Like, it's weird to see that kind of stuff here. It's very common to see that kind of stuff other places, but definitely not in Canada.
And there's nothing about a common culture. There's nothing about common languages. So this is a huge difference. We are saying that we exist as a nation. And we want to continue to do so. And we want people to understand where they arrive, to understand that there is a nation here, a Quebec's nation. There is a language here. There is a culture. There are some identity, and they are welcome here, but they must embrace this culture and then contribute.
How did we get so far removed from that? Like, yeah, you're moving to a new country. There's things here that you need to adapt to. There's a way of life that you need to adapt to and contribute to. Like, this isn't rocket science by any stretch. He went on to say how basically what Quebec is proposing is interculturalism, which is an integration model that the provincial government favors over Canada's multiculturalism approach. He also added that he does want immigrants to contribute concretely to all of their plans on this new model that they're wanting to adopt, to go outside their communities and go and speak with us, and then to also attend national events and to just be a part of the community. And one naysayer in particular said that the government should stop pointing to immigration as the cause of all the problems that the government creates. Which is kind of funny because, mass immigration is kind of the reason for a lot of the problems that we have in the economy and the job sector with our cultural identity that seems to be ever so fading away. What is that even these days? Lots of people can't even answer that. And of course, it's not the individual immigrant's fault for that. It's certainly a larger federal issue in how all of this was rolled out and implemented, but I don't know. Am I crazy for thinking that this is a good path forward? Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. With that, let's move on to something that really grinds my gears. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. So the federal government, obviously they're announcing that they want to dollar for dollar counter tariff. You have Chrystia Freeland saying it should be as much as $200 billion in a counter tariff measure, which is just, I don't know why you're admitting that publicly, but okay, cool. Thank you for showing us again exactly who you are, because that's a terrible idea, which we will get into some details of in just a little bit here. But the Trump tariffs are allegedly coming on Saturday. That's what we have been told. They will be in effect on Saturday. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. In response to this, the federal government is planning a stimulus package to help businesses and Canadians if U.S. President Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian goods. And the scale of relief will obviously depend on the tariffs that are imposed by the U.S. administration. Here's the thing. According to the source who broke this, this could reach pandemic level relief. And if you would recall, all of the whole CERB and all of that was a really big hindrance on our economy that we still have not recovered from. And I perfectly understand how they will position this. It's for the people. It's good. And so sure, this idea at first glance could be like, yeah, we're definitely going to need some help. Okay. But here's the thing. In order to pass anything that is monetary in value, you have to have it voted on, which would in essence lead to realistically a non-confidence motion. So we thought, because you could vote non-confidence in the tabled proposal of spending. And here's where I start to get mad. So listen to, here's what Jagmeet Singh said. I don't know, how long ago was this? 10 days ago? 9 days ago now?
That you would vote to bring the government down, that you would offer a vote of no confidence in the government. Is that still the case? Do you plan on doing that no matter what the economic circumstances, what Trump is doing, all the extenuating things?
Yeah, I've been really clear, and I remain clear, and I appreciate the opportunity to repeat it. We will be voting to bring down the government at the earliest opportunity. There will be an election.
Isn't that something? Well, Minister Jolie is in Washington today, Wednesday, the 29th, to discuss this ongoing situation with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We'll see how that goes. This report broke about this potential stimulus package that the government is wanting to implement to help Canadians with some relief. Here's what Jagmeet said just yesterday.
When we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs come in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. It's why we said from the beginning, EI is clearly not up to the task. During the pandemic, we realized EI does not cover the majority of Canadian workers. We called for changes to happen to EI so that we would be better prepared if something happens again that disrupts our economy. The Liberals did not listen. And so we are now in this position where we have an insufficient EI, the threat of tariffs, and many workers lying awake at night saying, am I going to lose my job or not? So I hope that there's a plan moving forward.
So there you heard it, folks. I guess what he said a couple days ago is no longer in effect because now he's a party for the working class, which is weird because he hasn't really done anything to stand up for them in the last little while, but okay.
I can't believe we're talking about this, Bashi. We're in this mess because of the fact that the Prime Minister prorogued Parliament knowing that we were going to be put in a position with the President Trump imposing tariffs. yet he still prorogued Parliament. I mean, they should have went back to Parliament yesterday. They should be in there discussing this legislation, being able to deal with it. They should have ran their Liberal leadership at the same time, but they didn't do that. They chose to put us into a spin cycle between now and March 9, when they have chosen their leader. And then from there, I don't know where they're going to go.
I mean, sure. The federal government wants to make it look a little bit more legitimate and a little bit less corrupt by having a leadership race before Parliament resumes so that they can successfully put their plant, i.e. Mark Carney, who is the WEF, inside of our government, which is something the WEF has long been bragging about, been talking about, how they need to have more of their members in government. There you go. You got Mark Carney.
Founded in 1971 by Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum is steeped in authoritarianism and Marxist ideology. It's an ideology which is creeping into governments across the world. To quote Schwab himself when speaking about the Canadian Parliament,
we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the president, who is a young global leader.
So if it was for anything other than selfish intent, they could have prorogued Parliament for a day. They could have recalled Parliament already. There's so many things that they could have done had this actually been in Canada's best interest. So why aren't they doing this? Well, some ex-posts I came across summarize this quite beautifully, which is exactly my own thoughts. It was never Team Canada's intention to stop Donald Trump tariffs. This is why they've only responded with threats. Their goal was always to manufacture a crisis and then grant themselves emergency powers and offer assistance with more socialism. This is how Team WEF operates. Another one from Ryan. Our government once again wants the entire nation to rely on them, and they love it. We are all suffering from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. These people are sick.
I totally read into Jagmeet Singh's statement that he's giving himself some room to come to a deal with the next Liberal leader. No question about it. And I'm going to say, there are going to be some really ticked off people in this country who are kind of counting on having a general election. And I'm not just saying only conservatives. I'm talking about general public who are saying, let's turn the page, let's move on, let's get somebody in there who's going to negotiate it with respect to the President Trump and move on with the deal instead of having an old, tired, recycled Liberal government in play.
We are without a doubt in an abusive relationship with our government, a narcissistic abusive relationship. And mark my words, they will position this and say, oh, that's so good. We're going to be helping out Canadians. Oh, it's so good that we're doing all of this for you. And anybody who opposes this plan, which is the most sensible thing to do, details we'll get into momentarily, is going to be dubbed as, you're not Team Canada. Oh, you don't care about the businesses. Oh, see, they only want to help out their big CEO buddies. All of that same nonsense, pathetic rhetoric at this point in time. And I'm just tired, really, of Jagmeet Singh. I'm tired of the Liberal Party thinking that I am so stupid that I'm going to fall for one of their tricks.
There's talk today of the government presenting a bailout package for people affected by tariffs, by American tariffs. Would you support the government in the House of Commons if they were to present such a thing?
I see no way I would support any astuce of the government. I believe that the intention would be to create a context in which the government would get 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they remain there longer than supposed. True hell in terms of parliamentary work. If the Liberals want things to become clear and want to help people, they should simply start the election sooner. Nothing prevents Mr. Carney or Mrs. Freeland, once this person is selected as the leader of the Liberals, to say, on March 10th, that we are going into election, we have improved the situation by 2 weeks. But I'm not getting into any tricks.
But why hasn't the government said, you know what, actually, instead of printing and borrowing more money, we are just going to offer businesses and consumers some tax relief? You know, let's cut some of the taxes. Businesses then get to keep more of their earnings. More jobs equals more taxable income, meaning the government will still be collecting revenue from an increased economic activity due to the price of things going down, due to people making more money. Canada becomes instantly more competitive internationally, which would attract foreign investment that we have been shooing off. And there would also be zero debt accumulated during this period of time. That means no inflationary pressure, no future tax hikes to repay the borrowing. Your grandchildren's grandchildren won't be paying off these decisions versus their game plan to borrow and print more money for a stimulus check. This sounds so stupid. This sounds so illogical. And nobody is talking about this either. You have Donald Trump saying that he's going to make it so that taxes in the US of A are going to be easy peasy bananas for anybody who wants to invest there. You're going to get significant tax cuts. He's talking about cutting the income tax compared to Canada, where it's just like, we're just going to keep taxing you instead. We're just going to keep printing money and we're going to keep taxing you. And who cares how that ends up? Who cares if 25% of Canadians are now considered in poverty? That was a recent stat that was published by CTV News last week. So you print money for stimulus checks, right? These little carve-outs, these little handouts, these little tricks that they do to get you to absolutely depend and rely on them and for them to be your heroes. Oh, we're such a savior, even though we put you into this mess. This is abuse. Full stop. This is going to trigger inflation. This is going to reduce the purchasing power of Canadians. This is going to provide a very temporary economic boost, which is something the Trudeau Liberals have been very good at in terms of all of these things that very temporarily spike numbers up, but they're not long-term because they are not sustainable. The long-term is disastrous. The long-term is what we're in right now, but 100 times worse. Oh, and let's also not forget that a stimulus check isn't going to prevent people from losing their jobs. It's not going to prevent businesses from firing their workers that they can't afford to pay anymore because they don't have any business like they used to. So this government that spends, hundreds of millions of dollars on consultants, that is the best of the best, apparently, their decision is that. Their decision isn't to, stimulate the economy, which will be suffering as a result of these tariffs already, without any debt or any inflation. No, the best they can do is make an already bad situation 10 times worse. Are you kidding me?
You standing next
well,
to
we're
him.
going to do things differently. Trust me.
Why haven't you already?
Well, there's things that you can do. There's things that we're going to change. There's a chapter which is closing with Prime Minister Trudeau. This is a new era.
I could literally probably do an hour-long video on what a disaster this is and pointing out all of the points and how every single thing, the common denominator, is the federal government. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment your thoughts down below. Bonus points. If you aren't already, give me a follow on other social media platforms as well. And I'll talk to you very soon.
The World Economic Forum promotes globalist issues such as climate change, so-called systemic racism and sexism, and creating an online digital identity. However, closer inspection reveals the World Economic Forum is an anti-capitalist, anti-free market organisation that seeks to subvert Western values and political processes. And they are very organised and very well funded. Their message is designed to appear harmless when in fact the ideology that underpins it is revolutionary and destructive. They train aspirational leaders in their ideology and help them make connections in spheres including politics, business and the arts. The World Economic Forum has consistently advocated for the harshest and most extreme COVID measures possible, including lockdowns, mandatory vaccinations, vaccine passports and mask mandates, despite these policies assaulting many of our basic liberties. The Forum believes that your freedoms should be minimised to prevent the imminent climate catastrophe, the one that's coming for 10 years in the last 50 years, by the way. The central theme of the World Economic Forum's material is what they call the Great Reset, which is Klaus Schwab's term for the opportunity the pandemic has presented to reimagine and reinvent the economic policies of the West. The term comes from Schwab directly himself with his 2020 book entitled The Great Reset. In a now deleted video titled 8 Predictions for the World in 2030, the World Economic Forum claimed that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, a slogan that hits the same dystopian note as work makes you free and ignorance is strength. You don't have to be a political philosopher to figure out that if you own nothing, the state owns everything. There's a word for this. It's called communism. The World Economic Forum and its affiliates shamelessly promote the abolition of private property, a central facet of Karl Marx's demented utopian ideology which led to the deaths of tens of millions of people worldwide in the 20th century. No matter how sophisticated the World Economic Forum tries to make the abolition of private property around the world sound, the fantasies of Karl Marx always lead to the crushing of individuals' liberties and lives and the expansion of the state's tyranny and power. It is imperative that we pay close attention to the World Economic Forum and do all that we can to preserve liberty and reduce government intrusion in our lives. And if we fail to do so, the anti-democratic forces in the West will continue to march on.